In the bustling chaos of a lively local market, Peter, a young man with Down syndrome, nervously started his first day at work. The initial sense of calm quickly unraveled when a frustrated customer unleashed a torrent of cruel words at him, leaving everyone around frozen in uncomfortable silence, unwilling to intervene. What no one realized was that among the customers stood a renowned Hollywood actor, quietly observing the unfolding drama. What he did next would leave the entire market utterly speechless. Before we delve deeper into this remarkable story, let us know where you're watching from. If you love inspiring stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We've got another heartwarming tale lined up for you tomorrow. Peter, a 21-year-old with Down syndrome, was known for his cheerful demeanor and unwavering dedication. Despite his radiant positivity, he carried the weight of inner battles few could understand. His past was marked by the harsh treatment of his stepfather, a man whose cold and demeaning words had etched deep scars into Peter's self-esteem. Short flashbacks of Peter's childhood showed him sitting quietly at the dinner table, enduring his stepfather's relentless criticism. "You'll never amount to anything, boy. Don't even bother trying." The cruel words echoed in Peter's mind like a ghost from his past. His mother, though loving, often felt powerless against the constant verbal abuse, silently watching as Peter tried to shrink away from the insults. But instead of letting these words defeat him, Peter resolved to rise above them. His resilience became his greatest strength. Growing up, Peter found solace in small acts of kindness. Whether it was helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries or taking care of stray animals in the neighborhood, he had a natural ability to bring warmth to those around him. Despite his challenges, Peter dreamed of working, of being independent, and of proving to himself and the world that he was capable of more than anyone gave him credit for. On this day, Peter entered the market with pride, dressed smartly in his new uniform. His mother had ironed it the night before, beaming with pride at her son's determination. At the market, he was greeted warmly by Jack, the store manager. "Welcome to the team, Peter. We're glad to have you here," Jack said, extending a hand. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best," Peter replied, his voice full of determination. Peter's training began right away as he learned tasks like organizing shelves and bagging groceries. Jack patiently explained each step, and Peter listened intently, committing every detail to memory. While his enthusiasm was noticeable, so were the occasional whispers and side glances from coworkers. "He's a bit slow, isn't he?" one colleague muttered to another, unaware that Peter had overheard. Peter chose to ignore the remark, focusing instead on proving his worth. He reminded himself of the encouraging words his mother often told him. "You are capable, Peter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." By the end of the day, Peter was physically drained but proud of what he had accomplished. He had completed most of his tasks successfully and even managed to strike up a few conversations with regular customers who appreciated his politeness and effort. As he meticulously bagged the last customer's groceries, he let out a sigh of relief. His shift was almost over, but he hadn't noticed a woman in the line growing increasingly impatient. The automatic doors of the market slid open, announcing the arrival of Karen, a sharply dressed woman in her mid-40s with an air of authority. Her sharp heels clicked against the tiled floor as she briskly made her way inside. Karen's stern expression radiated disapproval even before she reached the checkout lines. "These places are always so poorly managed," she muttered loudly, making sure others could hear. She snatched a cart and began hurriedly tossing items into it, maneuvering through the aisles with little regard for others. Any minor inconvenience, a child blocking her path or another customer taking their time, was met with an audible scoff or a sharp glare. Karen was not a stranger to getting her way. A corporate executive by profession, she was used to giving orders and having them obeyed. Patience was not her virtue, and her interactions with others often reflected her superiority complex. She viewed herself as someone who deserved the best treatment, no matter the situation. When Karen reached the checkout line, her frustration mounted. She joined Peter's line, watching him bag groceries with methodical care. "Is this for real?" she muttered, rolling her eyes. "How can someone this slow even work here?" When it was Karen's turn, she slammed her items onto the counter with exaggerated force, her irritation palpable. "Good morning, ma'am," Peter greeted her with a polite smile. Karen responded with a sarcastic tone, "Let's hope it stays good because I don't have all day." Peter began scanning her items carefully, ensuring each was properly bagged. Karen, however, grew increasingly agitated, her fingers tapping impatiently on the counter. "Is this going to take long?" she snapped. "It feels like I'm watching this in slow motion." Peter's face turned red, and his hands trembled slightly as he tried to quicken his pace. In his nervousness, a package slipped from his grasp and fell to the floor. "Oh my God, he can't even hold a bag!" Karen exclaimed loudly, glancing around for validation from the other customers. Peter bent down to retrieve the package, his breathing uneven. He tried to focus, but the pressure was overwhelming. Karen crossed her arms and leaned closer to the counter. "Someone needs to do something about this," she said, raising her voice. "This is ridiculous. I don't have time for incompetence." The murmurs of the other customers grew louder, but no one stepped forward. Karen's disdainful gaze bore into Peter, her words becoming sharper. "You shouldn't even be working here," she sneered. "Who hired you? Clearly, it was out of pity." Peter's hands trembled more visibly now, and his eyes welled up with tears. Memories of his stepfather's harsh words flooded back. "You'll never get anything right, boy. You're dead weight, and everyone knows it." The cruel echo of the past paralyzed him momentarily, but Peter whispered under his breath, "I just want to help." Karen, noticing his distress, pushed further. "You're holding everyone up," she declared, turning to the line of customers as if rallying them to her cause. "This is supposed to be a fast lane, and he is anything but fast." Several customers began recording the scene on their phones, some visibly uncomfortable, while others seemed hesitant to intervene. The tension was thick, and Peter fought hard to hold back tears, focusing on the groceries in front of him. "I can't believe I have to deal with this." The line of customers in the store collectively tensed as Karen's sharp voice cut through the otherwise quiet atmosphere. Most of the people waiting kept their eyes glued to their phones or the floor, visibly uneasy but unwilling to intervene. An older woman near the back of the line leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Isn't someone going to do something? That poor boy looks so lost." Her husband shrugged hesitantly, muttering, "I don't know. We don't want to cause trouble, do we?" Karen, however, seemed utterly oblivious to the discomfort she was causing. Her indignation consumed her entirely, and her voice grew louder with every passing second as Peter, the young cashier, tried to keep up with her barrage of complaints. What was once a welcoming and friendly neighborhood market now felt suffocating for Peter. He glanced around, noticing the mix of judgmental, pitying, and indifferent gazes from the customers around him. The fluorescent lights above only heightened his anxiety, making everything feel surreal and overwhelming. Karen's tirade showed no signs of stopping. She made a deliberate effort to emphasize each word, as if addressing not just Peter, but the entire room. "This is what we're paying for? This kind of service? He's way too slow. This is unacceptable." The tension in the line became almost tangible, a heavy weight pressing down on everyone present. Some customers tried their best to ignore the situation, while others glanced nervously between Karen and Peter, silently wishing someone else would step in. Peter, still struggling to bag the groceries, finally mustered the courage to speak. His voice trembled and barely rose above a whisper, but it was filled with sincerity. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm trying my best." Karen whipped her head toward him, her eyes narrowing with disdain. She leaned over the counter, her voice dripping with condescension. Trying isn't enough. Not for a job like this. People here have schedules to keep, and you're wasting everyone's time." Peter lowered his gaze, his shoulders hunched as if trying to make himself invisible. His trembling hands fumbled with another bag, which slipped from his grasp and fell to the floor. The loud thud seemed to echo in the silence of the market, each sound amplifying Peter's humiliation. Karen let out a short, cruel laugh. "Oh my God, he can't even hold a bag. This is pathetic." Some customers exchanged uncomfortable glances, their unease growing. A younger man in the middle of the line hesitated before pulling out his phone to record the scene. He leaned toward the woman next to him and whispered, "This is awful." Someone should stop her. The woman shrugged nervously, her expression uncertain. She's so aggressive. I don't want to get involved. An older woman at the back of the line adjusted her purse on her shoulder and took a hesitant step forward. Her expression was a mixture of sympathy and apprehension, as if debating whether she had the courage to act. But she stopped herself, glancing at Peter with pity instead. Karen, emboldened by the lack of opposition, took the silence as validation. She turned back to Peter, her voice growing even louder as she declared, "If you can't do this job, then maybe you should find another one. Someone needs to tell you that." Peter's hands shook even more as he focused intently on bagging the remaining groceries. He took deep breaths, but the air felt thin and suffocating. His sweaty palms struggled to hold the bags, and his eyes remained glued to the counter, avoiding Karen's piercing gaze. Across the store, Jack, the manager, finally noticed the commotion. He glanced toward Peter's checkout line, his brows furrowing in concern. He started walking toward the scene, but was stopped by another customer asking for assistance. Frustrated, Jack tried to explain that he'd be right back, but by the time he looked back, Karen's voice had risen yet again. "Do you all see this?" Karen exclaimed, turning to address the other customers in line. "We're all being delayed because of him. It's absurd that someone like this is working in a fast lane." The murmurs in the line grew louder, but still, no one spoke up. Each second dragged on endlessly, and the discomfort in the room was almost unbearable. Standing partially hidden by a shelf of goods, a man observed the scene. His posture was calm, and his simple attire allowed him to blend in with the crowd. Yet, there was something about his presence, his unwavering gaze, the slight tilt of his head as he analyzed the situation, that made him stand out. He didn't look surprised. Instead, his expression was one of calm contemplation, as though he had witnessed similar moments before. Peter didn't notice the man at first. His attention was consumed by Karen's relentless barrage of words and the oppressive weight of the stares around him. Yet, even amid the chaos, there was a subtle shift in the air, something Peter couldn't quite place but felt all the same. Karen, still oblivious to her surroundings, continued her rant, her voice rising with each sentence. The tension in the market reached a breaking point, and the murmurs from the customers grew louder. Finally, the man stepped forward, his movements deliberate and measured. "That's enough." The words were calm, yet carried a weight of authority. They cut through the suffocating tension like a blade, drawing the attention of everyone in the store. Karen froze mid-sentence, startled by the interruption. The line of customers turned as one, searching for the source of the voice. The man stepped into full view, his confident posture and steady gaze commanding the room. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Karen snapped, trying to mask her unease with indignation. "You think you can just show up here and tell me how to act?" The man didn't flinch. His voice remained calm but firm. "I'm not telling you how to act. I'm telling you that what you're doing is wrong." Karen blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "Wrong? You don't even know what's going on here. I'm just stating the facts. This boy is holding everyone up." The man allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile, though his eyes remained steady. "There's a difference between stating facts and using them as a weapon. He's doing his job, and you've decided to humiliate him for it. That's on you, not him." The murmurs among the customers shifted. For the first time, the focus wasn't on Peter, it was on Karen. Peter, still standing behind the counter, looked at the man with wide, uncertain eyes. He couldn't understand why this stranger had stepped in, but for the first time he felt a flicker of relief, as if someone had finally heard his unspoken plea for help. The man turned to Peter, his expression softening. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Peter," the young man stammered, his voice barely audible. The man nodded. "Peter, you're doing a great job. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. We all have tough days, but they don't define us. Do you understand?" Peter nodded, tears welling in his eyes. He couldn't find the words to respond, but the crushing weight on his chest seemed to lighten. Karen, now visibly uncertain, crossed her arms defensively. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but this has nothing to do with you. I just want fast service, and he's clearly not up to the job." The man's expression hardened, his calm demeanor unwavering. I'm someone who believes in respect. It doesn't cost anything to be kind, and right now, you're in debt." Karen's mouth opened as if to argue, but no words came out. The surrounding customers, emboldened by the man's presence, began nodding and murmuring their agreement. For the first time, Karen seemed to realize she was alone in her anger. Flustered, she grabbed her bags and stormed out of the store, muttering under her breath. The tension in the market dissolved like a burst bubble, replaced by a collective sigh of relief. Customers began clapping softly, a quiet acknowledgement of the man's courage. Peter looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and awe. "Thank you," he whispered. The man smiled. "I have the right to be frustrated. I'm wasting my time here." Karen protested, though her words came out more defensive than forceful now. Keanu nodded slightly, his calm demeanor unshaken. "You absolutely have the right to feel frustrated. What you don't have is the right to take that frustration out on someone who's done nothing to deserve it, especially someone who's here to help." For a moment, there was silence. Then, breaking the tension, a woman in the middle of the line spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "He's right. It's not fair to treat the young man like this." Her words seemed to unlock a floodgate. Another customer standing closer to Karen added firmly, "We're all waiting in line. No one else is complaining. What makes you think you're different?" Murmurs of agreement began to ripple through the line. Support for Keanu grew, and Karen's confidence visibly faltered. She looked around, but instead of finding solidarity, she saw disapproving stares and phones raised to record the moment. The energy in the market had shifted entirely. What began as a scene of humiliation had transformed into one of unity. Karen's gaze darted around, her bluster fading. She stammered, "I just wanted better service." But her voice was barely audible, and her once commanding presence had shrunk to a shadow of itself. Keanu held her gaze for a moment longer before turning back to Peter, who stood frozen behind the counter, his hands still trembling slightly. Keanu's tone softened. "Keep being yourself, Peter," he said with a reassuring smile, "because who you are is already more than enough." The applause started softly, but grew louder as Keanu turned and began to walk out of the store. Customers clapped, not just for him, but for the moment of justice and humanity they had witnessed. Peter's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he looked at the line of people, now filled with supportive and encouraging expressions. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt seen, and he felt like he mattered. The echo of Karen's heels clicked against the tile as she hurried out of the market, her head down. The automatic doors whooshed open and closed behind her, leaving a brief silence in her wake. That silence, however, was quickly replaced by murmurs among the customers. Conversations about what had just unfolded spread through the line, some still glancing at the videos they had recorded on their phones. "She had no right to talk to him like that," an older woman remarked to the person next to her. "That man was incredible. I never imagined someone like Keanu Reeves would show up here." "I know, right?" another customer replied, still in awe. And the way he handled it, he didn't yell or lose his temper, just calm and respectful. Meanwhile, Peter remained rooted behind the counter, his hands resting on the edge as he tried to process everything that had happened. He stared down, as if searching for answers in the smooth surface of the counter. How had a moment of humiliation turned into something so empowering? Jack, the store manager, finally arrived at the checkout area, his expression a mix of concern and guilt for not intervening sooner. Placing a hand on Peter's shoulder, Jack asked, "Are you okay, Peter?" His voice carried genuine concern. Peter looked up at Jack and gave a small, tentative smile. "Yes," he said quietly, but there was something different in his voice, a touch of confidence that hadn't been there before. Keanu's words echoed in his mind. "Your worth isn't measured by how quickly you bag groceries. Your worth is who you are." Peter took a deep breath, feeling a weight he hadn't even realized he was carrying begin to lift. As he resumed bagging groceries, the atmosphere in the market felt completely transformed. Customers began treating him differently. A woman handed him her items and smiled warmly. "You're doing a great job, Peter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." An older man in line added, "Hey son, keep it up. You've got more courage than most people out there." These small but sincere words were like bricks rebuilding Peter's self-esteem. one at a time. He felt lighter with every kind gesture, as if the room itself had been filled with warmth and understanding. At the back of the store, a young woman, still holding her phone, approached Jack. "That was amazing," she said. "Did you see how he handled everything? You should post this on social media. People need to know how incredible Peter is." Jack smiled and nodded. "I agree, but right now, the most important thing is making sure he knows that." The market, once a place of tension and conflict, now felt like a community. Strangers who had been quietly standing in line minutes earlier were chatting like old friends. Conversations about the power of kindness and standing up for others filled the space, replacing what had been an oppressive silence. When his shift finally ended, Peter walked to the locker room with slow, deliberate steps. He sat on the wooden bench, staring at his uniform folded neatly beside him. His mind replayed the events of the day. For so long, he had believed he was invisible, that people only saw his mistakes or his awkwardness. But today had been different. Today, someone had seen him, really seen him, and had made him believe in himself. Keanu's words rang in his ears. "Who you are is already more than enough." Peter smiled to himself, feeling a spark of pride he hadn't felt in years. He remembered his mother's words that morning, telling him how important he was to their family. Now, for the first time, he was starting to believe it. Outside the market, Keanu Reeves walked calmly toward a parked car. He wasn't seeking recognition or applause. For him, this was just another day of doing what he believed was right. Before getting into the car, he glanced back at the market one last time and smiled. He knew the moment wasn't about him, but about Peter, and how a single act of empathy could change the course of someone's day, perhaps even their life. The next day, the event's impact began to spread. The video of Keanu defending Peter went viral, shared by millions across the globe. Hashtags like Respect for Peter and Kindness Matters trended on social media, sparking conversations about the importance of treating everyone with dignity and compassion. Those who had been present in the market shared their experiences, inspiring others to reflect on how small actions could create big ripples. Peter, who had once feared being noticed, was now seen as a symbol of resilience and strength. People across the world connected with his story, finding hope and inspiration in his courage. The narrator's voice closes the story with a reflection. Every day gives us the opportunity to be kind, to lift others up instead of tearing them down. No matter how small the action seems, it can have a profound impact. In the end, we are all responsible for creating a world where respect and empathy are the norm, not the exception. The next morning, as Peter walked to the market, something felt different. The weight of cruel words that had once haunted him was gone, replaced by the warmth of encouragement and support he had received. When he entered the store, customers in the checkout line greeted him with smiles and kind words. He smiled back, his chest swelling with a newfound confidence. In that moment, Peter knew he would never feel alone again. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to